The Galactic Council chamber hummed with nervous energy as ambassador Kethfer of the Zephyrian Coalition stood before the assembled representatives. His crystalline features reflected the soft blue light of the chamber's bioluminescent walls, casting dancing shadows across his worried expression. "Fellow beings," Kethfer began, his voice carrying the musical tones typical of his species, "we have confirmed the signals. The third planet of the Sol system has achieved basic radio communication." A ripple of excitement passed through the chamber. First contact protocols were among the most sacred procedures in galactic law. Every spacefaring species remembered their own first encounter with the greater community. The moment when they realized they were not alone in the universe. Commander Yithmal, a towering representative from the warrior caste of Nexus Prime, leaned forward in her seat. Her 6 arms gestured dismissively. "Another pre-warp civilization reaches out. What makes this one special? We monitor hundreds of such species across the galaxy." Kethfer activated the holographic display at the center of the chamber. A blue-green planet materialized, spinning slowly in the artificial light. "This world is ... unique, our long-range sensors indicate. It sits in what our scientists classify as the death zone around its star." The chamber fell silent. Every species present knew the stories of Deathworld's planets, so hostile that they existed only in theoretical models and the darkest nightmares of xenobiologists. Worlds where the very air was toxic, where massive storms could level continents, where the native life forms had evolved into living weapons just to survive another day. "Surely you jest," whispered Dr. Velton, the chief xenobiologist for the Science Consortium. Her tentacles writhed nervously as she accessed her databanks. No intelligent life could possibly evolve on such a world. The energy requirements alone would be impossible. The atmospheric pressure, the temperature variations, the radiation exposure. "And yet," Kethfer continued, gesturing to the slowly rotating planet, "our sensors detect not just life, but civilization. Cities spanning entire continents. Industrial activity on a massive scale. And most remarkably, they appear to be thriving." The hologram zoomed in, revealing swirling white clouds, vast blue oceans, and brown-green landmasses. To the assembled aliens, it looked like a beautiful paradise world, the kind that colonization fleets would fight wars over. But the data streams flowing alongside the image told a different story. "The atmospheric composition is 21% oxygen," Kethfer read from his notes. "That alone should create constant firestorms. The gravity is 1.2 times galactic standard. Surface pressure readings indicate an atmosphere so dense it would crush most of our species instantly. And the weather patterns." He paused, checking his instruments twice to ensure accuracy. "They experience something called hurricanes that generate wind speeds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. Commander Yithmal's warrior sensibilities were clearly disturbed. What manner of creatures could survive in such an environment? They must be encased in protective suits at all times, living in sealed bunkers deep underground." "That's what we thought initially," Kethfer replied, manipulating the controls to display intercepted transmissions. Static-filled voices filled the chamber, speaking in the harsh, angular language the xenolinguists had dubbed English. Images flickered across the display, grainy black and white. Footage of bipedal creatures. Dr. Velton's tentacles curled in disbelief as she studied the beings. "They appear to be ... protected, those thin organic coverings they wear. Surely those cannot provide adequate shielding against their planet's hostile environment. According to our analysis, those coverings appear to be decorative rather than protective. We've intercepted transmissions showing these beings, they call themselves humans, existing openly on their planet's surface. Some even appear to be engaging in recreational activities in the most dangerous weather conditions." The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. The concept was simply incomprehensible. To species that required environmental suits just to visit worlds with minor atmospheric variations. "There must be some mistake," insisted Ambassador Grexter of the Peaceful Coalition. His flower-like head swayed gently as he spoke, his species having evolved on a world where the weather never varied more than a few degrees and storms were unknown. Perhaps our instruments are malfunctioning. No species could adapt to such extremes. Kethver had anticipated this reaction. He had been studying the humans for several standard months now, and every discovery had been more shocking than the last. I thought the same thing, Ambassador. But observe this transmission we intercepted just last week. The display changed to show humans in what appeared to be a recreational gathering. They were running across vast distances under the blazing heat of their star, pushing their bodies to apparent limits while others watched and cheered. The ambient temperature readings showed conditions that would have been fatal to most galactic species within minutes. They call it a marathon, Kethver explained. Apparently they engage in this activity voluntarily for entertainment. Dr. Velton was frantically checking her calculations. The thermal output alone. Their circulatory systems must be incredibly advanced to prevent hyperthermia, and the muscular efficiency required to maintain locomotion under such gravity. She looked up from her instruments with wide eyes. By the cosmic void, what have we discovered? The implications were beginning to dawn on the assembly. First contact protocols existed for a reason to ensure peaceful integration of new species into galactic society. But those protocols assumed that newly discovered civilizations would be, by definition, less advanced than their spacefaring discoverers. The idea that a pre-warp species might be biologically superior to their would-be mentors had never been seriously considered. What is their technological level? Asked Commander Yuthmal, her voice betraying a hint of concern that hadn't been there before. Primitive by our standards, but advancing rapidly. They have achieved chemical propulsion sufficient to reach their planet's satellite. They have split the atom for both energy generation and... Kethver paused, his crystalline features darkening, and weaponry. A collective intake of breath swept through the chamber. Atomic weapons were considered barbaric by galactic standards. Relics of a species' violent adolescence that most civilizations abandoned as soon as they discovered more elegant energy solutions. However, Kethver continued, their applications of atomic energy for peaceful purposes show remarkable ingenuity. They have harnessed controlled fusion reactions, something that took most of our species centuries after achieving spaceflight. And they've done it using raw materials that exist naturally on their death world. What do you mean? Dr. Velton asked, though her tentacles were already writhing with dread at the potential answer. Their planet naturally contains uranium, thorium, and other radioactive elements in concentrations that would make most worlds uninhabitable. The humans appear to have evolved not just tolerance for radiation, but the ability to harness it. They live on a world that is literally poisonous to most galactic life. The silence that followed was profound. Each representative was grappling with the same terrifying realization. They had assumed they would be the advanced civilization making contact with primitive natives. Instead, they had discovered a species that had evolved in conditions so hostile that they might represent an entirely different class of life form. Ambassador Grexter's voice quavered as he spoke. What? What do our strategic analysts recommend? Kethver's expression grew even more grave. They are divided. Some believe we should make immediate contact, hoping to guide their development toward peaceful purposes before they achieve interstellar travel. Others suggest we should maintain observation distance and prepare our defenses. Defenses? Commander Yuthmal's warrior instincts were fully engaged now. Are you suggesting they pose a threat? I'm suggesting that a species capable of thriving on a death world, developing atomic weapons as a natural progression of their technology, and treating radiation exposure as a routine occupational hazard might not conform to our usual first contact expectations. Dr. Velton had been quietly running simulations on her personal interface. When she looked up, her coloration had shifted to the pale green that indicated severe distress. I've been modeling their potential biological capabilities based on their environmental adaptations. If my calculations are correct, an average human would be capable of surviving in vacuum for several minutes, withstanding gravitational forces that would liquefy most of our species. and operating effectively in radiation fields that would be instantly lethal to us. The chamber fell silent once again. The beautiful blue-green world spinning in their holographic display suddenly looked far less inviting and far more ominous. "There's something else," Kethver said quietly. "Their transmissions suggest they are already aware they are not alone. They actively search for signs of other intelligent life. They send signals into space hoping for a response. They build instruments to listen for communications from other worlds. Then they expect us," Commander Yithmal observed. "More than that, they hope for us. Their literature is filled with stories of meeting other species, traveling to distant worlds, joining galactic communities. They dream." The decision had been made. After 3 days of heated debate, the Galactic Council voted to initiate first contact with the humans. Ambassador Kethver found himself leading the diplomatic mission aboard the research vessel Harmony of Spheres, accompanied by a carefully selected team of xenobiologists, linguists, and military observers. As their ship entered the Sol system's outer edge, the full reality of what they were attempting began to sink in. The human star was more violent than anything in civilized space, constantly hurling deadly radiation into the void. Most spacefaring species required heavy shielding just to approach such a stellar body. Yet the humans lived on a planet that orbited comfortably within this radiation zone. "Contact established with human communication networks," announced linguist Zorthek. His serpentine body coiled around the translation matrix. They use electromagnetic pulses to transmit information. Remarkably efficient, though the signal strength suggests their equipment is far more robust than necessary for planetary communication. Dr. Velton looked up from her bioscanners with confusion. "That equipment isn't overbuilt for planetary use. It's designed to punch through their atmosphere. The signal degradation from their weather patterns alone would require amplification levels that we typically reserve for interstellar communications." The implication sent another chill through the crew. The humans weren't just adapted to survive on their death world, their entire technological base was designed around conditions that would cripple most galactic civilizations. "Initiating contact protocol," Kethver announced, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. They had spent weeks crafting the perfect message, peaceful greetings, mathematical concepts to establish intelligence, offers of friendship and knowledge exchange. The response came faster than anyone had expected. "Unknown vessel, this is Houston Ground Control. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. You are in violation of restricted airspace." The matter-of-fact tone caught everyone off guard. There was no wonder, no excitement, no fear, just the calm, professional demand for identification that suggested the humans had been expecting this moment. Zorthek's translation matrix worked frantically to decode the nuances. The designation Houston Ground Control appears to refer to their space traffic management system. They have ... procedures for unidentified spacecraft. They have what? Commander Yithmal leaned forward, her 6 arms tense. The humans appear to have established protocols for handling unknown vessels in their space. They're treating our arrival as a routine occurrence that requires proper authorization. Dr. Velton's tentacles curled with nervous energy. How is that possible? This is their first contact with alien intelligence. They should be either terrified or overwhelmed with curiosity. Kethver made a decision. Transmit our prepared greeting. Let's see how they respond to confirmation that we are indeed extraterrestrial visitors. The response came even faster this time. "Unknown vessel, we copy your transmission. Please maintain current position while we establish contact with appropriate authorities. Do you require assistance with your vessel? Are you in distress?" The control room fell silent. The humans weren't asking who they were or marveling at their existence. They were asking if they needed help. "Sir," Zorthek reported, his voice filled with disbelief, "I'm detecting massive increases in electromagnetic activity across their planet. They appear to be ... mobilizing." Dr. Velton's scanners confirmed the readings. "Military installations are powering up worldwide. Transportation networks are shifting to emergency protocols. But there's no panic. The population centers show elevated activity, but not chaos. They're organizing. Within minutes, a new voice came across the communications array. This one carried different tones, older, more authoritative, but still remarkably calm. Extraterrestrial visitors, this is Admiral Sarah Chun, United Earth Space Defense Command. On behalf of humanity, I welcome you to our solar system. We've been waiting for this day for a very long time. The casual mention of Space Defense Command sent alarm signals through every military mind on the alien vessel. The humans had a dedicated military organization specifically for space-based threats. Commander Yithmal's warrior instincts were screaming warnings. Admiral Chun, Kethver responded carefully. We come in peace, seeking diplomatic contact between our species. We represent the Galactic Council of Peaceful Civilizations. We appreciate that, Ambassador. Would you be willing to meet with our diplomatic team? We can arrange a meeting aboard your vessel, or if you prefer, we have facilities prepared for extraterrestrial contact. We understand you may have biological requirements different from our own. Again, the casual confidence. The humans spoke as if they had been preparing for this moment for years. Which, as it turned out, they had. Admiral, Dr. Velton interjected through the translation matrix, may I ask how long your species has been preparing for contact with alien civilizations? Officially? About 70 years. Unofficially? We've been thinking about it for centuries. When you spend your whole existence stuck on one planet, you develop some pretty detailed plans for what you'll do when you finally meet the neighbors. The exchange continued for several hours, and with each passing minute, the aliens' understanding of humanity shifted. These weren't primitive beings stumbling into galactic civilization. They were a species that had been systematically preparing for this moment while simultaneously developing technologies and strategies that took other species millennia to achieve. When Admiral Chun finally arrived aboard a human shuttle, the aliens' preconceptions shattered completely. The shuttle itself was a revelation. Built for travel through the Deathworld's hostile atmosphere, it was over-engineered to a degree that bordered on the ridiculous. What the humans considered a routine transport vessel could have served as a military assault craft in most galactic fleets. Admiral Chun emerged from the craft, wearing what she described as a standard environmental suit. The aliens' bioscanners immediately went haywire. The suit's specifications indicated it was designed to function in vacuum, underwater, in corrosive atmospheres, and under radiation loads that would sterilize most inhabited worlds. Pleasure to meet you all, Admiral Chun said, removing her helmet to reveal a middle-aged human with graying hair and eyes that held the sharp intelligence of a career military officer. I hope you don't mind the precautions. We weren't sure what your atmospheric requirements might be. Dr. Velton found her voice first. Admiral, forgive my directness, but our sensors indicate your environmental suit is rated for conditions that most of our species would consider unsurvivable. Admiral Chun smiled. Well, you never know what you might run into out there. Better to be overprepared than dead, right? Speaking of which, I notice your ship has some interesting radiation shielding. Much more sophisticated than anything we've developed. Mind if I ask what you're protecting yourselves from? The question revealed the fundamental gap in understanding. The aliens were using advanced shielding to protect themselves from the natural radiation of space. The humans were casually wearing suits that could protect them from the heart of a fusion reactor. Admiral, Kethver said carefully, our species consider your world to be what we classify as a death world. The conditions on your planet are so hostile that most galactic civilizations could not survive there even with protective equipment. Admiral Chun's eyebrows rose with what appeared to be genuine surprise. Really? Huh. I mean, sure, Earth can be dangerous if you're not careful, but Deathworld seems a bit dramatic. We've got some pretty nice places. Hawaii's lovely this time of year. Dr. Velton pulled up the data on her scanner. Admiral, your planet's oxygen concentration is sufficient to create spontaneous combustion. Your weather patterns include storm systems with wind speeds that exceed the structural limits of most galactic architecture. Your gravity would crush 17 of the 23 species in our coalition, and you live there voluntarily? Commander Yethmal added. Admiral Chun looked genuinely confused. As opposed to what? It's our home. Besides, most of us actually enjoy a bit of weather. Keeps life interesting. The conversation continued with the aliens growing increasingly disturbed as they learned more about human capabilities. When Admiral Chun casually mentioned that humans regularly engaged in activities called extreme sports, that involved deliberately exposing themselves to mortal danger for entertainment, Dr. Velton had to excuse herself to prevent her systems from shutting down entirely. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Kethver said, his crystalline features reflecting his deep concern. Your species voluntarily jumps from flying vehicles at high altitude, races vehicles at speeds that would be lethal in any collision, and climbs sheer rock faces using only your physical strength. For fun. Well, when you put it like that, it does sound pretty crazy, Admiral Chun admitted. But life's too short to play it safe all the time. Besides, most of us have pretty good reflexes. Comes with growing up on a planet that's actively trying to kill you? The casual way she dismissed the dangers of her world sent chills through the alien delegation. They were beginning to understand that they weren't dealing with a primitive species that had somehow survived on a hostile world. They were dealing with a species that had been... The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened just 6 hours after Admiral Chun returned to Earth. The alien delegation aboard the Harmony of Spheres had transmitted their findings, and the implications were staggering. Every military analyst in civilized space was running worst-case scenarios while diplomatic corps across the galaxy prepared for a potentially galaxy-changing first contact situation. Kethver stood before the assembled representatives once again, but this time his crystalline features reflected not nervous excitement but deep concern mixed with growing respect. Fellow beings, he began, our assumptions about the inhabitants of the Death World were ... insufficient. The humans are not simply survivors who manage to achieve intelligence despite their hostile environment. They are a species that has been shaped by that environment into something entirely unprecedented in our galactic experience. The holographic display activated, showing Admiral Chun in her environmental suit. This individual, Admiral Sarah Chun, represents their military leadership. What you see is not their most advanced protective equipment but standard gear for routine operations. Our analysis indicates this single suit provides protection equivalent to what we would consider assault-grade military armor. Dr. Velton added her biological findings to the display. More disturbing is what we learned about their unprotected capabilities. Humans can survive in vacuum for approximately 2 minutes without equipment. They can withstand gravitational forces up to 12 times galactic standard before losing consciousness. Their reaction times in crisis situations are faster than our emergency computer systems. A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. Commander Ythmal's 6 arms gestured for attention. The strategic implications are clear. If this species develops interstellar travel capability, they could potentially conquer any system they choose simply by virtue of their biological advantages. That brings us to the critical question, Kethver continued. What are their intentions? Admiral Chun was surprisingly forthcoming about human psychology and motivation. They are indeed expansionist, but not in the way we initially feared. The display shifted to show footage from human transmissions, cities, art, music, literature. Their expansion drive comes not from aggression or resource competition, but from what they call curiosity. They explore because they want to learn, to experience new things, to make contact with other forms of life. Their entire scientific establishment is focused on understanding the universe around them. Ambassador Grexter's flower-like head swayed thoughtfully. That sounds almost too idealistic to be believable. What species develops such capabilities without corresponding aggressive tendencies? Dr. Velton had been studying this question extensively during the return journey. One that had to cooperate to survive. Their death world didn't just make them individually tough, it forced them to work together in ways most species never develop. Their entire civilization is built around the concept that individual survival depends on group survival. Explain, demanded Commander Yithmal. Their planet regularly produces disasters. That would destroy most civilization storms. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, temperature extremes. No individual human can survive these events alone. They developed complex social structures specifically to handle large-scale emergency responses. When disaster strikes, they instinctively organize to help everyone survive. Kethver nodded, remembering Admiral Chun's casual competence. This was evident in their response to our arrival. Within minutes of detecting our ship, they had coordinated a global response. Not to attack us, but to ensure appropriate authorities could handle the situation. They treated first contact as an emergency that required their best efforts to ensure success. The implications were beginning to sink in. The humans weren't a warrior species that had conquered their environment through force. They were a cooperative species that had survived by working together against a common enemy, their own planet. There's more, Dr. Velton continued. Their approach to technology development follows the same pattern. They don't build weapons first and then adapt them for peaceful uses. They build tools to solve problems and only weaponize them when necessary for survival. Admiral Chun showed us examples of their space program. It began as pure scientific curiosity about what existed beyond their world. The chamber fell silent as representatives considered this new information. A species with the biological capabilities to dominate the galaxy, but with psychological drives focused on exploration and cooperation rather than conquest. What did they want from us? Asked Ambassador Grexter. Kethver's expression shifted to something approaching wonder. Knowledge. Admiral Chen spent most of our meeting asking questions about galactic civilization. How do we organize interstellar governments? What scientific discoveries have we made? What challenges have we overcome? She was particularly interested in peaceful conflict resolution techniques. They want to learn, Dr. Velton added. Not to gain tactical advantages, but because they're genuinely curious about how other species have solved problems they're still working on. Admiral Chun was fascinated by our radiation shielding technology, not because they wanted to copy it for military purposes, but because they're trying to improve life support systems for their space exploration programs. Commander Yithmal's warrior instincts were still engaged. But what about their military capabilities? Surely they have weapons appropriate to their biological advantages. They do, Kethver admitted. And those capabilities are sobering. Their standard infantry equipment would be classified as heavy assault gear by our standards. But here's what's remarkable. Admiral Chun was completely transparent about their military strength. When I asked about their defensive capabilities, she offered to provide detailed specifications. She did what? Several representatives spoke at once. She said, and I quote, "If we're going to be neighbors, you should know what we're capable of, both for your security and ours. Better to avoid misunderstandings that could lead to conflicts neither of us wants." The chamber erupted in amazed murmurs. Military transparency between potential allies was one thing, but no species offered detailed combat specifications. During first contact negotiations, Dr. Velton brought up her final analysis. I believe we're dealing with a species that has developed beyond traditional military thinking. They're so confident in their survival capabilities that they don't consider potential enemies to be existential threats. Instead, they view other species as potential partners in solving universal challenges. What kind of challenges? Ambassador Grexter asked. Everything we've been struggling with for centuries. Admiral Chun mentioned that humans are working on problems we haven't even considered. How do you maintain technological civilization while preventing environmental destruction? How do you expand into space without losing the cooperative bonds that hold society together? How do you maintain genetic diversity during long-term space travel? They're thinking about challenges that arise from success, not survival. Kethver activated a new display showing human scientific achievements. Their approach to problem solving is also unique. Where we typically focus on elegant solutions using advanced materials and energy systems, they focus on robust solutions using whatever resources are available. Their technology is designed to work under the worst possible conditions. Show them the reactor specifications. Dr. Velton suggested. The display shifted to technical diagrams that made several representatives recoil. These are the specifications for what humans consider a standard power generation system for space exploration. Notice that it's designed to operate safely even if 70% of its safety systems fail simultaneously. Commander Yithmal studied the displays with growing amazement. This level of redundancy is unprecedented. Most of our critical systems fail if even one backup system is compromised. Because they design everything assuming it will be operated under crisis conditions by people whose lives depend on its function, Kethver explained. They don't build equipment that works perfectly under ideal conditions. They build equipment that works adequately under terrible conditions. The strategic implications were becoming clear. Humanity wasn't just individually superior to most. Galactic species, their entire approach to technology and civilization, was designed around assumptions that made them incredibly robust against the kinds of failures that could cripple other civilizations. The question before us, Kethver concluded, is not whether we can defend ourselves against human expansion. The question is whether we're wise enough to learn from them. Ambassador Grexter straightened in his seat. What do you recommend? Full diplomatic engagement. Offer them membership in the Galactic Council immediately. Not as junior partners being introduced to advanced civilization, but as equals bringing capabilities and perspectives we desperately need. Dr. Velton nodded enthusiastically. Admiral Chun mentioned that humans are planning interstellar exploration missions within the next century. They're going to develop faster than light travel with or without our help. The question is whether we want them exploring the galaxy as our allies or as unknown quantities operating independently. Commander Yithmal, despite her warrior background, had reached the same conclusion. Better to have them war.